All right, everyone, now that we've talked a little bit about the mouth and the stomach, let's move on to the intestine. We can see here that the accessory organs are going to start to come into play, as I mentioned. Oh, shoot, sorry.
That's okay.
Just keep recording.
I'll just keep going, okay.
Yeah, all right, there we go. All right, so start here, right here, yay, okay. All right, so now that we've moved out of the intestine, we can move into, or moved out of the stomach, we can move into the small intestine. So let's understand a few concepts first about what's happening in the small intestine. As I mentioned, the intestinal system is really outside your body. And so the center of this tube, this hollow tube going from mouth to anus, is the lumen. And so when I talk about the lumen and what happens in the luminal area of our digestive system, that's the center there. That's the outside. It's surrounded by our mucosa and several layers of muscle and tissue in the intestinal tract. Just like in the stomach, muscles in the intestinal tract along those intestines will move so that we can break our food down, so that we can move it forward as well as segment it. We want to segment our food because we do want to potentially reduce the surface area of the things that we eat so that the enzymes can act on it. And we are going to talk very particularly in lipid digestion about movement from the lumen into the gut cell, or what we call an enterocyte, and then into the blood. So just keep those terms in mind as I continue on. Here too, we see those accessory organs, the pancreas, the gallbladder, and also not pictured here, the liver, being involved in digestive process. Now the pancreas, the liver, the gallbladder, those are inside our body. And they have ducts that allow for secretion into the intestinal tract. And we could even talk about pancreatic recirculation and hepatic recirculation, which means something might go from the pancreas into the intestine and back around again, recycling to some extent these products. For example, bile, we will recycle some of that. However, if we lose bile, which actually does happen when you have a high fiber diet, fiber binds this thing called bile up. We'll talk about that as we continue. But we're going to build on our knowledge here. So a lot of this might be very new, but remember, we're building on our knowledge. So let's go ahead and look here at the small intestine. We started up at the stomach. We're moving down. Remember, our belly area is kind of the start of that small intestine. Actually, a lot of that pain might even be coming from your colon, where fibrous fermentation happens. But let's go back up here to the duodenum. So there's the liver, respective, it wasn't in the last slide, to the gallbladder and to the pancreas, the stomach. And what's first going to happen, we're going to see some hormones. So the first hormone that we're going to see is secretin. And that's going to start causing the release of some of our enzymes. We'll talk about those. We have some larger and smaller enzymes. Additionally here, we'll see the triggering the release of cholecystokinin. That's going to help us release bile. And bile is a product that helps emulsify fat. And if you don't know what emulsifier is, it's actually something you see in detergents, you see it in salad dressing. If you've ever made just oil and vinegar salad dressing on your own, you'll notice that, it kind of separates out. We've got oil and water. And so companies that make salad dressing will add an emulsifier to break that up so that you have a mixed product. And that's what bile is actually going to do in the lumen of your small intestine. It's going to break up your fat or your lipids so that they are more digestible. One thing we should keep in mind here is when we talk about this environment, that this is really an aqueous environment, that it's water. And so when you eat fat, that's lipid, and oil and water don't mix. And so this bile helps in that environment. It helps break the fat down, which on its own wants to clump up. And I do have a little live action video of how that works, so check that out too. Lastly, we see gastric inhibitory protein. And this is going to start triggering some of your insulin. And it will also start to decrease the gastric movement. And that's because, you know, as things get to your duodenum, maybe when we slow the stomach down a little bit, we don't want to keep dumping things in the duodenum and overwhelm your system. So we do want to slow down gastric secretions as we get to the duodenum. And one other thing that's important, and is the role of cholecystokinin, is to buffer this chyme as it gets into the intestinal tract. Because while you were, so while you were in a very acidic environment here in the stomach, this was an acid, okay, and we can remember that was because of hydrochloric acid. Down here in the duodenum, we don't want an acidic environment, so here we have to change the pH and make it more neutral. So we want a neutral pH. All right, so far we see all the action here of the intestinal hormones. So if you're following along with your learning objectives, there we go with all our intestinal hormones.